What's up, guys? It's Force Death 76 here, and today I'm going to be ranking all of the Alien movies and giving my thoughts basically about each one as well when I go through the list. I recently just watched all of them chronologically, so starting with Prometheus and going all the way to Resurrection. I've actually only seen the first two before years ago, before I did this chronological watch through of all the movies. I really liked some of them that I didn't see, and I felt like others were not as good, which I'll be talking about. I'm going to be doing this list from my favorite to least favorite, and let's just get right to it. So, a big topic that's debated upon in the Alien community is which is the best movie of the whole franchise, Alien or Aliens? I think this really does come down to what you prefer in movies. If you prefer horror, suspense with a little bit of science fiction thrown in, you would gravitate towards Alien. But if you prefer action-packed, high-intense movies, you would prefer Aliens. And that's why for the number one spot, for me, basing off all that stuff and just what I prefer from as to be the perfect movie, I'm putting at the number one spot, Alien. Alien, I really do find to be a perfect movie in so many ways. I think the cinematography by Ridley Scott is wonderful. The cast, the actors did a phenomenal job with their roles. There's a lot, too, that's in this movie that really makes you question a lot about this universe that we're in. Some things that come to mind is like the space jockey, how the alien eggs even got on this ship that they received the SOS signal from, where the alien is, how certain characters meet their fate. There's just a lot that's even to this day still discussed about Alien. But as I said, I really do think this is a perfect movie, and it takes place in 2122, where the Nostromo crew is coming back from a cargo mission, and they receive an SOS signal, and they have to go check it out. One of the crew members gets infected by an alien facehugger, and we all know how crazy, intense, and terrifying the movie gets after that. I just think this movie, though, has, like I said, so many great things about it. The jump scares in this movie, from a movie from 1979, still have some of the scariest jump scares you'll ever find in movies. When I first watched the original Alien years ago, there was two jump scares in particular that made me really scared after a huge buildup of fear that was happening in the movie. They really caught me off guard and terrified me. The characters, too, I think are just so relatable, and you feel like you can identify with them and connect with them more than characters in Aliens or any other Alien movie. Ripley, too, I think this is the beginning of an amazing female protagonist, which wasn't a common thing back then in movies. She, while I don't think she shines as much in this movie as she does in the sequel, is still a great character. She thinks logically, and the characters, for the most part in this movie overall, make really smart decisions. It's just the xenomorph is really smart as well. I love the xenomorph, though, in this movie. The way how it can just appear at times. The first time it appears, I can't imagine being in the theater and seeing something like that. Nothing like that really has ever been done in cinema. A creature like the xenomorph, biomechanical, and it's so smart how they only showed certain parts of it at times. They never really showed, except for a few shots, only for a small amount of time, and at the end of the movie, the full xenomorph in a shot. Having those small little snippets with this really creepy, tense music building up, just seeing small things such as the tail or a real close-up of the jaw about to strike and kill, it's just amazing. And like I said, the atmosphere is great. The Nostromo interior is beautiful. I love looking at pictures of it, and I just love the retro science fiction look. I think it's timeless. It kind of reminds me in a way of Serial Experiments Lane, her room, just seeing all like the technology and the computers and stuff. There's something about this retro sci-fi field that I just love looking at. It's so interesting and just really captures my eye. Just exploring the Nostromo and seeing different parts and where characters will get killed, whether it be in the vents of the room where they eat their food. Nowhere is safe in the Nostromo, and I think just preying on the fear of there's something hiding on this ship, and it is a stealthy killer, and it could come out at any point to just terrify the crew and you, the viewer. It really gives this whole sense of just unease throughout the whole time of the movie, and I think it's a perfect movie. I think it holds up exceptionally well today, and I don't think it seems dated really at all, other than a few minor effects. I think there's some twists in this movie that first time viewer watching would still find amazing and not find cheap at all. It would really catch them off guard. Perfect combination of horror and sci-fi. Besides The Thing, I'd say this is like the peak horror sci-fi movie. They master the genres beautifully well. I'd probably put this in my top 5 movies of all time, probably. It's definitely in the top 5 horror movies of all time that I've ever seen. Definitely recommend for horror fans. This is what I wish more horror would be like. This is a slasher movie, basically, if you really think about it. And I think it's the perfect slasher movie. Yeah, perfect monster movie, perfect suspense movie. Make you shake at times, just waiting for what the hell's gonna happen. Ripley's awesome. The characters are awesome. The questions that they'll bring, like even when the team investigates the distress signal and you find this creature that's in this ship, it makes you wonder, what the hell is this thing? It's been there though for thousands of years and fossilized onto the chair. But whatever it was hoarding these eggs, and who knows where they came from. Phenomenal movie, as I said. I think everybody should at least check out the first Alien if you especially love creepy horror suspense type stuff and science fiction. Following Alien, I have Aliens as the next one in this list. Aliens, while I do not like it as much as Alien, is probably one of the best sequels ever made to a movie. It picks up 57 years after the first one, where Ripley was in hypersleep, and we go to this planet where aliens have just taken over and wiped out a whole civilization, basically, other than one girl named Newt, who in a way, Ripley becomes a motherly figure to. This movie, while I don't like as much as Alien, though, is pretty good. It's a very good action film. If you want to just have a good time watching some monsters getting blown up, watching some monsters getting shot down, it's great. You'll just have a great time. I think Hicks is great. Ripley shines in this movie so well. I think that's the highlight of the movie. It's just Ripley's character and development. Alien started it off with her being really good, and then Aliens just escalated that. James Cameron, I thought, for Ripley's character, did a phenomenal job, and it's my favorite aspect of the whole movie. The Queen is pretty interesting too. Now, I do have one minor complaint with the Queen, and it has nothing to do with Aliens in itself, but in the grand scheme of the Alien universe. Having a boss character, knowing that's how the eggs were laid from the Queen, I think is really cool. I think it's really cool too how the boss fight at the end with Ripley and the Queen plays out. Just a really nice battle. Bishop, I think, is a really cool android, a huge contrast to the one we had in the previous movie. And Bishop, I think, is a really cool character too. Now, my issues with Aliens as a movie, though, they stem in the grand scheme of things of the Alien universe. If you watch the director's cut for the first Alien, you figure out that the aliens, the way how they reproduce, is not with a queen, but by egg morphing, by taking a living organism and shaping it into an egg that will contain a face hugger and all. Obviously, Cameron wouldn't have known this by creating the sequel, but I think what kind of ruins the Alien a little bit is introducing this boss character, the Queen. Now, while I do like the Queen in Aliens, the grand scheme of things, the Queen kind of ruins the perfect organism aspect of the xenomorph that was pretty enforced, saying that this thing is perfect, it's unkillable, you can't kill it. Because the Queen is basically a boss for the xenomorphs, and as you even see in Aliens, the xenomorphs can easily be killed with just gunfire. It really takes away, unfortunately, this menacing fear of this unkillable, unstoppable beast that the first movie gave. And that's my only problem really with Aliens. Because I love the first movie so much, it really does suck to see the xenomorph being reduced to just being able to be killed by gunfire like it in the sequel. Regardless though, besides that, the movie by itself is pretty good. I think that everybody should watch it if you like the first movie. It's very different from the first movie, but it's still great. And that's pretty hard to come by in sequels, especially when they derive from the original feel of the material. It's a pretty good movie. I would check it out. My second favorite of the whole entire list, that's for sure. It's fun. Ripley's awesome. Characters, not as good as Alien, but are pretty cool. The movie, I'd say, is a little dated because there are some blue screen effects that play out in like certain combat scenes, but it's fun. If you go into it not thinking about the whole scheme of things too much, you'll have a fun time. Next, I have Alien 3. Alien 3 is kind of controversial with some people, as it started off by killing some really important characters that a lot of people have come to love in Aliens, and just basically saying F you aliens. This story is disregarding all of that. And that left a lot of people upset, and I understand why. But I think why I like Alien 3, the director's cut, was because it attempted to go back to the roots of the first Alien, where there's one xenomorph and you're stuck in this area with it with a crew. And I think this movie, the biggest problem I do have with this movie is the characters. They're so forgettable and they're not really interesting that much. Yeah, some of them are pretty sick freaks and some of them do pretty cool things, but they're not really memorable like in the first two movies. Ripley, I still think is shown pretty well in this movie. You find out halfway through that she's carrying a alien queen inside of her, and the whole movie is basically about trying to kill this xenomorph that's in the prison that she landed on this planet. I don't think I can say much about this movie. I just really kind of appreciate what they've done in the assembly cut compared from what I've read, like the changes that they did from the theatrical release. The extra 30 minutes of time just I think really helped the movie in a numerous amount of ways. I do think what kind of like also sucks about this movie was the POV shots from the alien during the chase scenes. They're kind of cheesy and they don't really add to the suspense of the movie, so that's why I kind of think the movie fails. The prison I think is a pretty cool setting. Some of the kills when they happen pretty sudden, I think they're pretty cool. There was one kill in this movie that, as much of the gory shit that I've seen throughout my entire life in video games and movies, made me flinch and made me had to look away at one point because I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this actually happened. Biggest flaw is that this movie can be boring at times, but I do still think Ripley's character is done pretty well here. Uh, the prisoners, I don't really care that much about character-wise. There are some that are pretty cool, but not really, I'd say, memorable. I think that's just the biggest problem I have with this movie. It's not memorable. It's good if you watch it, and I think it offers a pretty satisfying conclusion to Ripley's character, which how she sacrifices herself so that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation will not get a hold of her queen that's inside of her. And it's a good end to her character. It finally relieves her from all the pain and suffering that she's had to go through since the first Alien movie. CG Alien kind of stinks. The way how they fight it is pretty cool. And that's all I'll have to say. It's nothing special, this movie. There's some pretty interesting kills. There's a good final act. How they try to kill the xenomorph is pretty cool. And that's all I can say. Next on my list, I have Prometheus. Now, it's not really an alien film, so to say, but it takes place in the same universe. Prometheus takes place at the very beginning of the alien timeline as we know it right now, and it doesn't focus on the xenomorphs. There's no xenomorphs in this movie whatsoever, but it gives some more insight about what that creature we saw on the spaceship that the Nostromo crew was exploring. We find out in Prometheus that they're a race of beings called engineers, and they're responsible for all human life on Earth. I think the engineers are really cool, and it does kind of suck that they do get overshadowed by the xenomorphs a lot. I know when this movie came out, a lot of fans were saying, "Where are the xenomorphs? I want xenomorphs, Ridley Scott. What are you doing here?" But I think if you look at the engineers by themselves, they're pretty cool. They have a lot of interesting qualities about them, and there's a lot of questions really to be asked, saying like, why do they do the things that they do? What is this mural that's in their ship? What is the big overall plan that they were trying to do? Why do they want to destroy humanity? And it's not really explained, and it kind of returns to the original Alien feeling where it makes you ask a lot of questions about stuff. Granted, this movie is more science fiction than horror. This movie really isn't scary whatsoever, but I liked it. I think the biggest fault, though, is that the movie can just be really slow and boring at times. And the reason why I gave it the number 4 spot is because the characters in this movie make such stupid decisions. Like, entirely like teenager little kid decisions that are just so dumb, and I think that's what hurts the movie the most. Shaw I think's a pretty cool character. Some people think that she could be the next Ripley, which I don't think so. I think while Shaw was cool, filling the shoes of being the next Ripley, there's some pretty big shoes to fill. I think she's really cool about how she wants to explore the engineers with her partner, ask them a ton of questions about why they created them. Fassbender as David in this movie, the android, is one evil dude, and I love it. This dude is so evil and does not give a crap about anybody other than himself. He views himself superior to all forms of life. There's one scene that I really love in this movie where he's able to understand the engineer's technology in the ship, and he plays this hologram scene where they're setting a course to Earth to destroy it, but they view all these planets through the holograms, and he's just standing watching it with this cool score playing. It's just a really cool scene, probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. The trilobite, I think, is a pretty cool thing too, which is, I think, is basically just Ridley Scott wanting to put in a face hugger that's not a face hugger. And the Deacon at the end too, I wish we would see more of in future movies, but is basically just a xenomorph, but not a xenomorph. But overall, Prometheus, while not really an alien movie, so to say, I think is really interesting. Plot is pretty cool, I'd say. Just this crew trying to figure out like what their purpose was, why the engineers created them, going from that to why did the engineers want to destroy them. The end scene with Shaw and the engineer is just really cool. Unfortunately, none of those answers that Shaw wanted to get from the engineers would be happening in the sequel, which I'm going to be putting next on the list, which is Alien Covenant. Now, this is when my list is going to start getting to where I don't think these movies are particularly really that great. I think they're just okay or meh. Covenant, I feel, had a lot of shoes to fill with what Prometheus set up, and it failed in a lot of aspects. I think my favorite thing about Covenant was the acting of characters. When I saw that Danny McBride was in this movie, I rolled my eyes a little bit because, oh god, he's going to play the overly comedic character. But I was pretty impressed. He played a serious character. He felt pretty in place with the movie and as a crew member, and I thought he did a pretty good job. I think his performance was one of my favorite things in the movie. The movie basically follows like what happened after Prometheus, where David just it's just such a mess. Basically, the engineers have got wiped out by David. David lives on the planet that they live on now. He wiped them out with the black goo that the engineers had. The black goo infected a lot of plants, and the plants would release spores, and when the spores would go into hosts, they would create the aliens known as the Neomorph, which was pretty cool. I think first time watching the movie, I was like, I like this more than Prometheus, but thinking about it now, I mean, it just ruined a lot of what Prometheus set up. It's definitely more action-packed, more in your face, but I think the story is just not good. It really does ruin like a lot of Prometheus, and it ruins Alien because the xenomorph was created by David in this movie. But in Alien, when the Nostromo crew finds the ship on that planet, the engineer that they find is fossilized on there, so he was supposed to be on there for thousands of years, meaning that the timeline screwed up. Covenant ruined the Alien timeline. It doesn't make sense anymore. I feel like I get what people mean when they say Ridley Scott screwed up the timeline with his prequels. Prometheus was pretty good, but Covenant just ruined it in the grand scheme of things. Kind of like how I was talking about with Aliens, how in the grand scheme of things, a lot of stuff doesn't really add up. Covenant is just an average movie. I mean, we've gotten to a point where we see a xenomorph in broad daylight. When we first saw it, we would barely see any of it, only see parts of it surrounded by shadow and darkness. But now we see the whole thing in daylight, and it's not scary. The CG xenomorph is not scary. Best part of this movie, I think, is the acting, and David as a character, still seeing him be one sick fuck, seeing all the sick shit that he does in the movie is pretty interesting. But, I mean, I just don't really care for it now, this movie. I think this movie really fucked up a lot that was in the timeline. A lot of it doesn't make sense. The ending is so cheesy beyond belief that you could see from a mile away. It's not terrible. I would watch it if you're an Alien fan. You might like it. I liked it first viewing. More thought about it. Started to dislike it more and more. And that's all I have to say. But I don't dislike it as much as the last movie, which is Alien Resurrection. This movie is not good. There's some cool things about this movie that I'm just going to talk about now. The newborn is really interesting. I like how it's a half xenomorph, half human hybrid, and I really wish we could see more of it, but we only see it for maybe like 30 minutes, 20 minutes on the screen, and it's just a shame. I feel like it's wasted potential. It's ugly, but I really like the design. What I find so kind of stupid is they cannot kill Ripley, literally, because her death, where it like meant basically putting an end to the Weyland-Yutani Corp trying to get a hold of the Queen, her death, putting an end to that, was meaningless. Because they still somehow cloned her, even though she was thrown in the lava, and they cloned her with the queen inside of her. And that's why in this movie, Ripley isn't Ripley, she's Ripley 8, the 8th clone that was created from them trying to get the alien queen xenomorph out of her. And because of this, it caused her to be like a half human, half alien hybrid as well, where she has acidic blood, and her personality is nothing like the Ripley we saw in the first 3 Alien movies. She says a lot of stuff that just does not make sense with what Ripley would do, and it really sucks seeing her act like this. Sigourney Weaver was so great in the first 3 Alien movies, and it just really sucks seeing what she's reduced to in this movie. Some of the one-liners she says are just terrible and have not aged well whatsoever. Characters in this movie are pretty dumb. I really don't like any of them. There's a lot of dumb, cheesy, cartoony things that happen in this movie, and I don't like it. The plot, I really could care less about. It's Ripley trying to escape because while they created the queen laid eggs, and the eggs had xenomorphs, and since they also had a mix of human DNA like the queen, they were able to think critically, which I guess is kind of cool. They were able to like deduct and like figure out that to sacrifice one of their own, they were able to escape a cell that they were in for scientists to test. They were able to figure out by just killing it and using the acidic blood to burn to the ground, they could get through. But this movie is just really cartoony at times, and it's just very out of tone for like the first 3 Alien films that came before it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. This movie is not that great, but I would still watch it if you want to watch all the Alien movies. That's my ranking for the Alien movies. Let me know your rankings in the comments if you've seen all of them. And thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more content.